David Crystal, the linguist. Every time I hear the name, there is a linguist in front of me. So, but you were always a linguist in your life, in all these decades. But if you would not be a linguist, what else you would be?
I can't imagine life without being a linguist, to be honest. Certainly a student of human behavior of some kind. I'm not quite sure what. I think perhaps in my wildest dreams I might like to be a cinematographer or a film director or something like that, where one can make pictures of the world and the humans in it and all the things that happen. I envy their ability to do that. Perhaps I would be a film cameraman in another life.
Yeah. You're already retired, but you're still active, really active. So you publish a lot of books and articles within 1 year. Like I checked last year, and you had like 20 publications, as I saw on your homepage. So what gives you motivation? What gives you idea to do this still?
Well, language. Language itself is the most amazing thing. Partly because it varies so much, partly because it changes. Whatever the English language was like yesterday, it is different today, it will be different tomorrow. And the same for the Czech language and all the other languages of the world. And so you spend a long time studying English as it is today. I write an article about it today, or even a book about something that's happening now. Take the internet, for instance. The internet today will not be the same next year. And so there is another article or book waiting to be written. It is an ongoing saga of change and variation. And when you specialize in a language like English, as I do, well, English, as you know, is a global language. And as a result, there are just thousands and thousands of opportunities, varieties, dialects of English, all saying, come and study me, come and study me. And that's what keeps the interest going in my case, and that's what motivates an awful lot of the publications that you mentioned.
Pronunciation. Pronunciation is always changing during the life of languages, you know that. And we had a huge step, or I would say leap, since the Germanic English. So what do you think? How will English sound like 100 years later?
Oh, it's impossible to predict the future when it comes to language. If you think like this, 1,000 years ago, Latin was the normal language for education. Everybody understood Latin. If you had said 1,000 years ago, what will language be like in 1,000 years' time? And you said, nobody will know Latin, then nobody would have believed you. They would have thought you were mad. So, what will English be like in 100 years or 1,000 years' time? Nobody knows. But you can make certain guesses. And one of the guesses is this, that English as a global language is now spoken by more non-native speakers of English than native speakers of English. For every one native speaker of English, there are now 5 non-native speakers of English. So the center of gravity of the language has shifted in the direction of all the people who are learning it. Now, numbers count when it comes to language, and these people are going to influence the way English is spoken in the future. They haven't much in the past, but they will in the future. So I suspect we will see a new kind of standard English grow over the centuries, and new varieties of English grow, which will reflect the way in which non-native speakers speak it, and it will affect pronunciation. You know, if most non-native speakers find, say, th difficult, you know, th as in thin and the as in this, and so they try to replace it by f or v or something, and say fin and this, or sin and this, or something like that, and you hear these pronunciations. Well, at the moment, they're all considered incorrect. But in 1,000 years' time, they might all be speaking like that.
So do you feel the English language has deteriorated over recent years?
Deteriorated? No. Why would I think that? It has just changed. Every generation thinks that the language is deteriorating. This goes back hundreds of years. In the 18th century, people felt the language is deteriorating. We must protect it in some way. Every generation says this. And all the language does is change and change and change. People who don't like change think it's a disaster. But it is a living language. The only languages that do not change are dead ones. Any living language must change to keep pace with society and changes of attitude and so on. And so change for me is not deterioration, it is not progress either, it is just change, that's all it is. The language does not get better or worse over time, it just changes.
You always wrote about English.
Yeah.
Of course, that's your mother tongue. But is there any other language you've ever learned, or any language which you would like to learn?
Well, yes, English is my mother tongue and it's the one I specialise in. But I have Welsh as a second language, growing up in Wales. And of course in school I learned French and Latin and other languages and became reasonably competent in French once upon a time. So there was always, I learned Latin and Greek too in school, so there was always this linguistic interest. When I went to university and learned English and studied English there, it was English in the context of Germanic languages, so I learned about Gothic and all the other languages of olden day Europe, Frisian, things like that. And then when I started to teach linguistics, one of the things we did was we had these things called language practicals. Now, language practical is where a group of students get together with the lecturer and they bring in an informant who speaks another language. Anything, Chinese, Swahili, anything. And the aim is within one term, 10 hours, 1 hour a week, maybe sometimes 2 hours a week, to learn that language using linguistic techniques. And it doesn't take long to learn, if you know how to do it, to learn the sounds of the language, the sound system, the phonology, to learn the basic grammar of the language. The vocabulary, of course, is the killer because there is so much of it. But it's surprising, within 10 hours, 20 hours, you can learn enough of that language to have a basic conversation with the informant. The informant, you see, is not allowed to speak English, is only allowed to use his mother tongue. We can ask him questions in English, but he only replies in his mother tongue. And so you quickly immerse yourself in that language, and as a result, you fall in love with that language very, very quickly. And so I have always wanted to be fluent in every one of the languages that I've studied in that way, and I've studied 30 or 40 of those languages over the years. And so I want to learn all of them, you know, but it is not possible. And so the love affair with a language is a somewhat frustrating experience because you go so far into it, see its potential, its beauty, its variety, and then you have to leave it and go and find another woman, as it were, another language that you can then fall in love with. So there isn't one particular language that I've always wanted to learn. Every new language is one I want to learn and don't have the chance to do so. So in the end, I specialize in the language that I know best, which is English.
Have you ever had such an informant like Hungarian or Finnish?
Finnish, yes, not Hungarian. We had a very fine time learning Finnish, all the 16 cases of the noun in Finnish and things like that. Very difficult time for the students, I must say. But no, Hungarian, no, that never, coincidence just never came up.
What do you think about Duolingo, if you know Duolingo, the site? Language teaching site?
I don't know much about them. I know about it and I've sort of dipped into it, and there are lots of sites like this, but I don't know them well enough to evaluate them in any kind of way. They're all good ideas in the sense that they foster this curiosity. They respond to the curiosity about language that everybody has, and they do a good job. But how efficiently they do their different jobs, I couldn't say.
Because in the recent years I tried to learn some languages via Duolingo.
Yeah.
Because every time I wanted to learn Welsh, but we had a Welsh teacher here in Prague.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And but somehow at that time I did not remember well the words.
Yeah.
And then Duolingo came and there was a Welsh course, and I just realized that I can remember a lot of words now because it forces you to memorize, to repeat and practice.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the greatest point of Duolingo.
Yeah. Well, if they do that well, then it's a great opportunity. The internet has altered quite fundamentally the opportunities that people have to engage with other languages, not just modern languages, of course, but the history of languages as well. and also all the varieties of English or another language that there are around the world. You know, once upon a time, if you were interested in, say, South African English, you'd have to go to South Africa. Today, you just go to the relevant websites, and there it is, just waiting for you. So this is a good step forward, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I remember because it seems to be young, but I'm old enough to go to the libraries in the beginning. There was no internet in my early years.
No, mine.
And now I always say that it's really, really easy to learn any language of the world. Just download a PDF, MP3, go to YouTube and check the dialect, anything.
Yeah, and also go on a forum where you can actually have one-to-one exchanges with a person who is a native speaker of that language, in exchange sometimes for them having experience in learning your language. And there are lots of these distance learning pairs, as they call them, out there now. And that's a marvellous experience too. Like a pen friend in the old days, you know, it's now an internet pen friend.
Yeah. Speaking about Hungarian and Finnish, so we are Finno-Ugrians, how is it that many linguists, or most of the international linguists, ignore the Finno-Ugrian languages in their examples? Like, I mean, these languages, all of them is well described, 3 of them is member of the EU, so why do they
have no
forget?
idea. I don't know. Maybe it is the fact that such languages are not a routine part of the experience of philological courses in Britain, for example. I remember when I was doing comparative philology, the emphasis was definitely on Germanic languages and Romance languages. The other languages sort of came in here or there. And there was certainly an influence of the scope of these families. So the more languages there were in a family, the more likely the lecturer was going to use them as examples. Whereas, you know, Finno-Ugrian, that's it. And I think perhaps there was a tendency to see that as not as fruitful an area of inquiry as some of the other language families. I don't know. It puzzles me because both Finnish and Hungarian are 2 of the most fascinating languages that Europe has got, and the fact that they are so distinctive compared with the other languages, and all the speculation there has been about why this is, means that they ought to have a prominent place, it seems to me, in comparative philological courses. And maybe some these days do that. I'm thinking back 50 years now or more, don't forget.
And you mentioned Welsh. So how well do you speak Welsh?
I learnt it as a second language. It wasn't a home language for me, but growing up in Wales, it was everywhere, of course, and it was taught in school, and it was on the streets. But then I left Wales when I was 10 years old, and so I didn't have the opportunity to develop my Welsh as a teenager. And teenage learning is a very important stage in the learning of a language. My ability in Welsh is basic conversational Welsh, really. I would not be able to carry on a conversation like this in Welsh. I don't have that level of academic expertise. You know, all the things you have to do if we're having a conversation like this. I say things like, to be honest, to be perfectly frank, or putting this another way, all these phrases that are important for academic discourse, I don't have them in Welsh. And so my Welsh is a basic kind of Welsh, perfectly fluent in a conversational context, but as soon as you get into the more formal speaking areas, or for that matter, the writing areas, then it's limited. A lot of people are like this with a second language like Welsh, which had for many years an uncertain future. It was an endangered language and still is endangered to a certain extent. And so people's ability to use it is very erratic. Lots of people who speak Welsh in Wales who can only do so in certain circumstances and not others. Wel, da iawn, yes, ydw yn siarad Cymraeg.
In Rig?
Da iawn, very good.
Dipyn bach?
Dipyn bach, yeah, a little bit. Well done.
Yeah. Because for me, Duolingo was really good with Welsh. Like, usually if there is one language on Duolingo, it gives you like approximately 2,000 words in Italian, German, and Spanish, Portuguese.
And that's quite a good number.
Yeah.
It's still very low compared, I mean, 2,000 words is the average level of a 3-year-old child in learning a mother tongue. They have about 2,000 words by age 3. By age 5, they have got 5,000 words. By age 10, twice as many. And the average adult user of a language, like you and me, speaking our native languages, we have 50,000 words at our disposal, or more. You know, it is an enormous number. But 2,000 is a good start for basic conversational ability.
So you are here in Prague because of Shakespeare. So now we can hear how his work sounds like in the original pronunciation.
That's right.
But would you prefer a Shakespearean form of the current language?
Prefer it? Oh no, it's simply an alternative. I mean, when we're talking about theatre, to do a play as they're doing here in Prague Theatre in Shakespearean pronunciation is a choice that they make. It could have been done in modern English, or it could have been done in a Shakespearean accent. And the reason why they choose to do it is because it makes the actors and the audience feel closer to Shakespeare. This is the language as he would have heard it, or at least as far as the reconstruction can establish it authentically. It makes you feel that you're nearer to Shakespeare's time, because when you study the language as he used it, you find that many of the rhymes, for example, that don't work in modern English, do work in the original pronunciation. For instance, in modern English, the word love and the word prove do not rhyme. In Shakespeare, he makes love rhyme with prove many times in the sonnets, for instance. So how were they pronounced? And you do the research and you show that it was love and prov. The word prove was pronounced as prov. And so now you're reading the poem, or you're saying the words of the play out loud, and rhymes that previously didn't work now suddenly do work. And this makes people feel quite excited and say, oh, I want to hear more of Shakespeare spoken in that way. And that's the motivation. So it's just an alternative way of making Shakespeare's words come alive, come fresh to an audience.
Speaking about words, always words, is there any, or there are more words in English which you like? I mean, because they are beautiful, or they sound good, or the meaning?
No.
You can't pick up anything?
No, absolutely not. I do not have favorites. I do not have favorite words. I do not have favorite hates. I love them all. Let's put it that way. Every word for me has a story behind it. As I study that particular word or reflect on the way it's being used in literature or wherever, that for me, at that moment in time, is my favorite word. And then I go to another word, and then that is my favorite word. It's a bit like asking a mother or a father, do you have, amongst your children, which is your favorite child? Now, it is possible, of course, that some families might have a favorite child, but most parents say to me, that's a silly question. I love them all equally. They're all my favorites. And these words are all my children, in a sense, and I love them all. And so I have no favorites in that sense. Yeah, but if you ask people for their favourite words, or the words they love most, or the words they hate most, because it works both ways, they will tell you, yes, that is something that people will do, but not me. I think if you're a linguist, you suddenly find yourself distanced from that kind of instinctive value judgment. And although this isn't to say that I don't have my favourite poets and my favourite novelists and my favourite poems and things like that. That's why I love Shakespeare so much, because of the beauty of his poetry. So that's a different question. But a single word or a single sound or a single grammatical construction, no.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely not.